first person we will talk about is Robert E. Lee. He was born on January 19, 1807 in Stratford Hall, Virginia. His father was a hero in the American Revolutionary War, but his family wasn't rich. Because his family didn't have any money, he saw the military as a way not only to get a free education, but to start a career. He entered West Point Military Academy at the age of 18 and graduated when he was 22. After graduating, he joined the Army Corps of Engineers. Lee's first encounter with the war was during the Mexican-American War. When he did so good, he was promoted to colonel. When the Civil War started in 1861, after helping to stop John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, he was offered to command the Union Army by Abraham Lincoln, but ultimately decided to fight for his home state and become the general of the Confederate Army of Virginia. Lee chose talented officers such as Thomas Jackson and Jeb Stuart to help him in the Civil War. Lee and his men would win many battles with their smarts and courage, but ended up losing to the Union. His army surrendered on April 19, 1865. After the war, Lee became the president of Washington College in Virginia. He would work there until he died of a stroke on October 17, 1870. The next person to discuss is Abraham Lincoln. Abraham was born in Kentucky on February 12, 1809. When he got older, Lincoln wanted to become a state legislator. The first time he ran for the position, he lost. He considered becoming a blacksmith, but he eventually became a legislator and decided to do law. About 20 years after launching his legal career, Lincoln made a name for himself. After he entered politics, he associated himself with the Whigs. In 1854, his political rival, Stephen A. Douglas, reopened the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which led to the downfall of the Whig Party. Lincoln then became a Republican in 1856. Abe became a presidential prospect. Lincoln then gave his full attention to his presidential campaign in 1860. Lincoln won in a decisive victory in the Electoral College. Before his inauguration, the South seceded from the Union. Another 6 states seceded and formed the Confederate States of America. Before Lincoln even moved into the White House, a crisis was upon the country. When the Civil War began, Lincoln was expected to be a leader for the Union. As a war leader, he was mentally nimble and flexible. With Lincoln's help, the Union won the war. After the war, Abraham's goal was to restore the seceded states back to the Union. Regarding Reconstruction, Lincoln was moving closer and closer towards the radical Republicans' ideas for the Reconstruction. However, we will never know because of what happened on April 14, 1865. While attending Ford's Theater in Washington, he was shot by John Wilkes Booth. Lincoln died the next morning on April 15th. John Wilkes Booth was born on May 10, 1838 in Maryland. His father, Julius Booth, was a well-known actor. As a young man, he was expected to follow his father's footsteps as an actor with his charismatic presence. At the age of 17, Booth was a good enough performer to be invited to tour the country with a well-known acting company. In 1859, he showed his support for slavery by joining a militia that helped in the execution of John Brown. During a break from theater, Booth got involved in a conspiracy to kidnap Abraham Lincoln. However, their attempt failed when Lincoln didn't show up to the place that they intended him to come to. This angered Booth and forced him to go more extreme. On April 14, 1865, just after 10 p.m., Booth shot Abraham Lincoln in the back of the head. After the shooting, investigators were in hot pursuit of John. The investigators followed Booth to a barn owned by Richard Garretts. When Booth refused to surrender, the investigators were forced to set the barn on fire. Booth tried to escape but was shot in the neck by the private investigators. Booth died 3 hours later on April 26, 1865. In conclusion, these trio of men were impactful on America, even if all of them weren't in necessarily good ways. Robert E. Lee and Abraham Lincoln were both great war leaders, while John Wilkes Booth changed the course of history forever.